Hey everybody, Marcus here. Man's elevation of woman above himself, his pangs for her approval, the foundation of his identity built upon her approval is shaken in each instant he witnesses female wickedness. He succumbs to bad conscience. To resolve this bad conscience, he must apotheosize women. He must erase all stains from his conception of woman. Man gazes inwardly and proclaims, "Women are good." And only good can come from good. Therefore, women can only bring about the good. If women can only bring about the good, then anything bad perceived to come from women comes not of her will. As bad actions are willed, and they cannot come from the will of women, and there's only the will of women and the will of men, then that which is bad must ultimately come from the will of man. Therefore, there are no exemplars of wickedness in women, only exemplars of justified responses to man's wickedness. In such feat of reason, the enslaved identity erases all faults, where fault seeks a source, from the part of women. With such a trick, he is able to purge himself of his bad conscience. If a woman does good, it is a confirmation of her goodness. If she does bad, a man lurks behind those actions. The extent to which a man believes this reasoning does woman approach the divine. The strength of his chains too rests on this one point. In sanctifying women's will, the burden of all guilt, the origins of all that is bad, is shouldered by men. In the case where a woman commits an act of wickedness, and it seems impossible to assign guilt to man, madness is invoked. Yet here again, the will for bad is not her own. Woman's will, sanctified, can do no wrong. What better foundation than this upon which to build morality? You believe I jest? In what case, when God's will was found in contradiction with woman's will, has woman's will given way? Contraception? Divorce? Chastity? Perhaps fidelity or modesty? Maybe obedience. But this is all child's play. Bestowal of the rank of human being is at woman's discretion. In the womb, a child is branded human only when she wills it. With the power to acknowledge or deny human status, so too one becomes the arbiter of murder. It is said that men legislate laws, legislate the will of the majority. The majority then, weighing God's will against woman's will, demanded woman's will be done. Only a god can compete with another god. The apotheosis of women was necessary for woman's will's victory over Judeo-Christian morality, over God's will. The pussy beggar, the sad bottom feeder that he may be, is not merely a danger to himself, but a danger to the rest of us. In attempting to give women anything and everything to win validation, he ultimately gives women the power over good and evil. He elevates her to the arbiter of morality itself, and with such a move, condemns all men to the whims and moods of what is inherently an irrational creature. This is what we mean when we say men worship the pussy. This is what we mean by pedestalization. It is not the banal deference of chivalry, no. It is the delegation of arbitration of the scales of good and evil, right and wrong, life and death, justice and injustice. For every value that can be put on any scale that ultimately is a moral scale, the pussy beggar, the timely man, today's average man, has let woman set the weight. Violence against women? Now, what is this? It is no longer three separate words. It is no longer violence. It is a new violence altogether, a new type of sin. The very phrase itself must be read as if it is one concept completely separate from violence itself. A man throwing a stone at a window has committed vandalism and himself a vandal. But if that window was the stained glass of a church, then he has committed blasphemy and himself a blasphemer. And so too, violence against women is no mere violence, but blasphemy, impiety, desecration, a violation of a kind particular and unique. Violence against men, well, is mere violence, petty vandalism in comparison. Yet who, if not the white knight, the pussy beggar, and women themselves who have made a sin of violence against women, a sin sufficient to bring down the wrath of heaven, the state, apotheosized woman's archangel of death? But women make for monstrous gods, and so too their morality. The morality of the herd stands testament. The divinity of woman is akin to that of the gods worshipped by the Incas, gods requiring perpetual human sacrifice for their survival. Male human sacrifice. Karoshi. The Japanese have a word for this sacrifice. To drop dead from overwork, at work, karoshi, is but an immediate and sudden picture of the slow death men endure as beasts of burden on behalf of women. And make no mistake about it, this is human sacrifice. When man trades time, his vital life energy, in exchange for money that he then spends on women, he has transmutated vital energy into blood sacrifice. Oh, but it is just money. Oh, just money? Well, it is life energy. If the sublimation of life energy was a reversible process, wealth and immortality would synonymize. This vampiric transference is only one of woman's divine abilities. The apotheosized woman, contrary to the life-giving motif thrown onto the feminine in antiquity, is a god of death and decay. No later than the first day that birth control came into being did women demand it for themselves. We're finally free of the curse of bearing life. They celebrated their own sterility as if they had overcome some disease or rot within themselves. Free, yes, they were now free. Free to debauch themselves in spasmodic orgiastic decadence known only to animals. This freedom of theirs was not a human freedom. It was a bestial freedom. No woman became better from birth control. No woman became more human, more worthy of the human condition. Birth control cannot benefit the mind. It can only nullify a consequence of the depraved. They claim birth control has freed them from their biology? Freed from what is life-giving, bound to bestial passions previously held in check by the life-giving bond. Women have traded a lesser evil for a greater evil. Well, nay, that they consider the first an evil to begin with speaks to the nature of the beast of the latter. And the beast in woman, a gluttonous, lustful kind, becomes pestilent in their freedom, spreading disease with impunity, a receptacle of every which bodily fluid through every orifice, base, disconnected from any higher ideal, a chastity, modesty, temperance, all values and scales of a superseded morality, of a superseded God. Abortion, murder rebranded. But how regressive of me. Perhaps a little oppressive as well? It seems well the case that a modern interpretation of life is predominantly contingent on geography. Each geographical region in which abortion is legal sets a ceiling as to the number of weeks during which such a procedure can take place. As these numbers tend to differ, it must follow that those places subscribing to 12 weeks necessarily conclude murder has occurred in those places subscribing to 20 weeks. Yet it is not life in general we are concerned with, but the arbitration of what is and is not human. It is ultimately woman who decides. A woman, having exceeded the 12 weeks of pregnancy allotted in her location, choosing to travel to a jurisdiction of 20 weeks is herself the scale on which humanity is determined. Oh, how easily does murder become mere expungence of cells. Where is her moral compass? It is nowhere. It is everywhere. Her will is the compass. And so here, abortion, fetus, procedure, Planned Parenting, all euphemisms, sterilizing, sanitizing, rebranding, and rationalizing murder. But women's will says otherwise. Women's will says it is a fetus, not a human. And in a puff of preference, no murder occurred. In no uncertain terms, the most dangerous place for a human being is to be in a woman's womb. To survive the womb tomb is itself a fortuitous happenstance. The single geographical contingency has spelled the demise of tens of millions to date, with no sign of decline and every sign of escalation. Yet who is concerned with the silent screams of a child, violently and maliciously ripped from the only place on earth it had a chance to become more, flailing ineptly at the air its last seconds of life, before it is chopped up for parts and sold off to cosmetic companies? How many women, we must ask ourselves, are currently wearing the very beauty products composed of their own aborted child, wearing the dead flesh of their victim like a psychotic serial killer? And yet here too, this is not enough. Woman is not satisfied with an upper ceiling. No, abortion, she surmises, ought to be legal all the way leading up to and including birth. Yet you protest. That will never be. Oh, that is monstrous. I say it only appears so because you are not used to the thought. Pregnancy is but 40 weeks. At a legal ceiling of 20 weeks, we are halfway there. What chance do 20 more weeks stand against the will of woman? And even upon the birth of a child, still, murder is not the case, but infanticide. Yet another euphemism. Murder is pushed back even further. If one were to take all this into account and posit a formulation of when human life begins, it would seem that it begins when a person can physically fight off their would-be murderer. And a thought to those who did survive their own birth and infancy. What do you make when you look upon your own mother and think to yourself, how close was I to the reaper? Was he my conjoined twin for a time? How long was my murder contemplated? For it cannot be said that such thoughts never entered your mother's mind. No, she did contemplate it. In secret, she contemplated it. How many babies, still endangered by their entrapment in the womb, if they came to know of their impending doom, would choose to gnaw through their own umbilical cords, to claw at the walls, to make her bleed, in hope to taking that bitch out along with himself? No, women are not the bearers of life. They are the obstacle to life. Their will at every turn commands death, decay, and pestilence. Women, graced with the gift of bearing life, have en masse rejected it. Have they ever deserved it in the first place? And when woman is not mutilating her innards, self-sterilizing, or thickly arbitrating humanity, she is mutilating her outer self. From plastic surgery to makeup, implants, and wigs, what part of woman does woman actually want to keep? There's indeed nothing she does not hate about herself. Of her own will, woman desires woman to cease to exist. But then, what is left but a walking cadaver, sterile, pestilent, doused in the dead flesh of her victims? This is your God? This is what you have apotheosized into a God? This is what you base your morality on? The pickup artist, the nice guy, the thug, the bad boy, the artist, the sensitive man, the metrosexual, the good man, the gentleman. All acolytes, mask donned for a macabre masquerade. All enslaved identities, all reflective of an interpretation of how best to win favor of the apotheosized woman. Yet, in common, they all bend a knee to the will of woman, to her moral weighings. This is the masquerade that follows the fickle morality of the apotheosized woman, men inventing identities ultimately centered on a singular core goal of female validation. How many men have been swallowed by the masquerade? How much energy, time, money, and goodwill has been thrown into this black hole? To know a man's strategy of winning validation is to know the man himself. His other qualities, merely decorations. When a man stands in front of a mirror asking himself, then answers in the negative, would I still be who I am, act how I act, value what I value, buy what I buy, speak how I speak, if women ceased to exist or had never been in the first place? When the man answers, no, I would not, he is firmly in the masquerade. And here we come full circle. In his need for validation, the pussy beggar apotheosized woman, gave her the power of good and evil, and now is thrown into a masquerade grounded on this fickle female morality, which in turn is grounded on women's fickle and inherently irrational nature. When Nietzsche declared the death of God, he was very well aware that morality too became unhinged. But the atheist found a solution. As Voltaire said, if God did not exist, it would be necessary to invent him. Thanks for listening. Go team.